welcome back to part 4 of box modeling series. In the previous tutorials I showed you how to find reference images to use as base topology plan, as well as creating simple blueprints ready to use as guides in 3ds Max. Now if you haven't seen these videos yet or have no idea what I'm talking about, then please go back and rewatch them. Also, if you understand the concept of what we are doing in these videos and would like to skip forward, you're more than welcome to. If I'm going too fast, please feel free to pause and rewind these videos. Okay, in this tutorial I'll be going over how to import your blueprints into 3ds Max using guides when creating our 3D model. Firstly, make sure you have your folders on or folders available where you saved your blueprints. They should be saved in your working folder which we created in our first tutorial. Also, make sure you have 3ds Max 2015 with a fresh new scene open as well. So let's go back into 3ds Max for a sec. Okay, so you should have a freshly new scene here. Before we do anything else, I just want to point this out. We must set up our unit scales first before we do anything. 3ds Max likes to use the generic unit scales, which have no specific measurements. So it doesn't use centimeters, doesn't use meters. It just uses units, 1 to 1. So if you're using centimeters for a model and you want to import it into a game engine such as UDK, it's going to represent those centimeters in a different scale. So before we do anything else, I just want to point that out. So let's open this perspective view up first, just for safety's sake, and we'll go up to the Customize tab located just in your toolbar. Go to Unit Setup. Now it will open up a dialog box. By default, it will be set to generic units. We want to change this to metric units, so just select the little metric units there. Also, for the drop down, we don't want meters, we want centimeters. Okay, so once that's done, go back to the top of the unit setup and select System Unit Setup. Now, by default, it should have 1 unit to 1 in inches. We want to change the inches to centimeters as well. So that way you have 1 unit to 1.0 centimeters, and all the rest, all the defaults should be fine as well. Once that's done, just click OK and OK. So now that we've got our scene set up pretty much done, we just want to create a new plane. Now, if you're new to Max, it's pretty difficult to navigate around the viewport. So all we have to do, hold Alt and middle mouse click to rotate around the canvas. Just middle mouse down will pivot, move left and right, side to side, and to zoom in, just middle mouse in and out. So that's pretty much the basic setup of how the navigation works. Okay, so what we want to do first, we want to create a new plane. So go into the Create tab and make sure the geometry is highlighted. Standard primitives is fine, and just in the object type, just select the plane and just pretty much drag left click, drag, and drop the plane into our scene. Now, if we move over to the Modify tab, just next to the Create tab, as you can see, the length and width are a little bit off. We just want to change this up a bit. Let's try and make these centimeters 120 by 120. So this way it'll give us a bigger canvas to work with. Now, once you've done that, I just want you to go to your folders where you saved your blueprints. Just move this folder to the side here, and we can just simply click, hold, and drag the image onto our plane. Now, once it's finished, there you go there. So I'll just minimize that back up. Now that we have our image pretty much dragged and dropped, I'll just hide the grid for a second. I'll just press G to hide the grid, G to unhide it as well. Also too, as you can see, these segments here, we don't really need them at the moment, so we can just change the length segments and width segments to 1 and 1. There we go. It'll remove those lines there, the edges I should say. Okay, so now that we've got our image on there, it may not be in proportion to what we want it to be. So, if you go to the modifier list, this is where all your modifiers can be located for your selected mesh. Now, all these modifiers can do different things, but at the moment we'll just focus on the modifier called UVW map. Now, you can't see it on my screen, it's just a little bit further down, but if you scroll down, it's where the U is, it's just below the unwrap UVW. So if you click the UVW map, and it'll create a new modifier called UVW map for you. Now, this map here just pretty much finds the bitmap that you're using and adjusts the size and width of a plane. So what we want to do, we want to just scroll down from the UVW map, make sure it's selected, scroll down, and where the alignment tab is, select bitmap fit. Now this will try and find the bitmap which we were using before. So I'll just go to where I found my images, category, working, and we'll just use the same blueprint that we just dragged and dropped in before. So I'll just double click, and as you can see, it just changed size now. So this is pretty much the correct size that we want it to be. So we'll just go back to the plane tab, move it down to the plane, make sure it's highlighted, and we can just adjust the width of the original plane back to the correct size of our image. So probably about there. Okay, so once that's done, we can then convert this to an editable poly. Now there's two ways you can do it. You can either right click on the plane, make sure it's selected. Down the bottom you've got to convert to, and you can just convert to editable poly, or you can just simply right click in the modifier list and go collapse all. But if you collapse all, sometimes it can go to an editable mesh, which we do not want. So it's probably best if you just select the plane, right click, convert to editable poly. Okay, and as you can see, all the modifiers have been collapsed together. Now you can treat the modifier list as pretty much layers in Photoshop. Whatever's on the top layer will be the first one, the visible one. So it works its way up. So just to keep that in mind. Now, since we've got one plane here, we don't want it all together. We want the top view to be underneath our model so we can work top down. We want the side view to be in front of the model so we can work on the side view, and so on and so forth with the top view and bottom view as well. So we're going to separate this plane into even segments so we can use as reference or guides, as I should say. So in the editable poly, make sure you select it, and in the selection we want to select edges. Now you've got 5 selections here. You've got vertices, edges, borders, polygons, and elements. So I won't go through them in this tutorial, but at the moment we'll just work in edge mode here. So I'll select the edge mode. So this will highlight all the edges on the outside of this plane here, or this polygon I should say. So I'll scroll down till you see a little connect button. So we won't press that yet. We'll just make sure we highlight these edges. So as you can see, it highlights red. If I press F3, it'll hide the polygon and it'll just keep the edges up. So F3 hides makes it go into wireframe, which is also edge frame, or F3 again to unhide it. So I'll press F3 for now, and I'll select that side edge here, and holding Control and click dragging to select multiple edges as well. So I'll just go back out into F3 and back into the modifier tab, back into the selection tab I should say. Select the little connect tool, but we don't want to press the button. We want to press the little grey, the black box that's the connection settings. So if we click on that, a little dialog box appears up here. So as you can see at the moment, its default settings to creating one edge along the selected edges that we highlighted before. So whatever you have selected, 2 different edges, it's going to just try and create a connection between them using one edge. So as you can see, it's created an edge here in between our plane here. We don't want the edge to cut through our top view. We want it to cut just after the top view and just before the bottom view of our blueprint. So this top box here allows you to pick how many edges you want. So we'll just reset that. I'll just right click to reset it back to 1. This middle one here moves or pinches how many. So if I have 2 edges that I want to create and I want to move them away from each other or pinch them together, then that one does that as well. So I'll just put that back to 1, and this one just shifts the edge down. So this is the one that we want to use at the moment. So we just want to move the edge just probably about here, so just about there. So it doesn't cut our top view off, our front view off, and it doesn't cut our top view off, and it also doesn't cut our bottom view off. So this is probably a good position to have it as. So once you've done that, don't tick the commit button, just tick the additive button. So we want to apply this edge, but we also want to continue doing this as well. So just press the additive button. Okay, so it's applied that edge and it's asking if we want to do another one. So we want to just select, click drag to select one edge, and holding control to select multiple edges. Click drag to select two edges. So now you can see that it's trying to create another edge for us. So now it's still cutting our bottom view off. So we don't want that. We just want to shift it a bit lower. So using the bottom selection, we just want to move this down a bit. And there we go. We got a good, nice edge just across from our side view and our bottom view. So if we want to commit both of them. So now that we've got our side view pretty much cut, our bottom view cut, and our top view cut. Now we want our front view to cut as well. So we just want to highlight these edges here, and we just want to connect settings again. We want to reset this back to 0. Now we just want to move this back up to where the cut from the top view and the front view would probably be best to have it. So about there will be a good way. Make sure it's on one connection and then connect. Okay, so now that we've got our connections done, all we have to do now is just place our models in the scene, our planes in the correct scene. F2 shows you what you have selected. I went to polygon mode, so now instead of selecting the edges, it's selecting each polygon that we just created then. So if I highlight, drag and cross, I can highlight them all, or just select one of each just by left clicking. Okay, so having the polygon selection selected, I want to select the top view, and I want to move this in the center of our grid. So I'm just going to unhide the grid for a second. So pressing G unhides the grid. Now, since this is still connected to the plane, I want to create a new object so I can manipulate it however I want. So by pressing W with the move tool, as you can see, this little button up here, the select move, also selected for me. So the shortcuts for select, rotate, and scale. So if I want to move my object, I can move it. If I want to rotate it, I can rotate it. And if I scale, I can scale it down. So I won't go through those just yet. I'll just go through the basics first. So we just want to press W to have the move tool selected. Holding shift will create new objects depending on what selection you have. So having polygon selected, holding shift and clicking along the Z axis, meaning up or down, holding shift, I'll create a new polygon, and this is separate to our previous mesh. Now when I let go, so a new dialog box appears. By default it's selected to clone to element. We don't want this, we want clone to object. So we want to create a new object that we can manipulate separately to the rest of the meshes. So I'll clone to object. I'll name this top view, and commit. Okay, so now that we've got a new object now, just keep in mind with our plane selected, it has an axis point in the center of where the plane is. So when we create new things from this plane, so what I just did there, it's the new object still going to have the original axis or transform of the previous plane that it came from. So if I select this model here, as you can see, our gizmo didn't move. Normally they should move to the center of the mesh, but this one didn't. So as you can see, I'm highlighting both 1 and 2, and our gizmo's not working. So if I wanted to rotate this during the center of moving it in the center of this mesh here, when I do that, watch what happens. See, it's not rotating, it's rotating where this gizmo is. We don't want that, so we want to reset this gizmo to the center of this object here. So it still holding down the rotation. If I right click, it'll just reset it back to it will just act like I didn't rotate it in the first place. So it's pretty much like an undo. Okay, so to reset its transform, just go to the hierarchy tool, and then we'll be able to adjust our pivot. So we want to affect pivot only, and we want to center it to our object that we have selected at the moment. So if you watch the pivot now, we'll move to the center of our new object. See? Okay, so once that's done, untick the effect pivot only. So now that our object will have its own rotation. Okay, that's good. Now when I go back to the move tool, I just want to center it into the grid. Now, as you can see, our X, Y, and Z positions are a little bit off. The X is -4, Y is 12. We don't want any of these. We want it just to set it to 0 in the world axis. So to reset this, you can simply just simply type in 0 centimeters 0 0 with the move tool. But I'll just normally just right click the little arrows to reset it to its original position. So now that it's moved straight into position in our world orientation and movement, our transform I should say. So now we've got our position of the top view. Now we just want to move this plane up a bit, move it out as well. Now we want our side view to be in the front view. Now at the moment we've got it in perspective view. We can move this little view cube around. This can also act as a rotation to our current selection, or we can just move around using the mouse and Alt rotating around. However, since we're in perspective view, orthographic view is a little bit different. So if I press F for front, it will show us our front view. The same if we press L for left, it's going to show us the left view. And T for top, it's going to show us the top view. So, and B for bottom is going to show us the bottom view. So if I just press P for perspective view again, it'll take us out of orthographic view. So we'll just go back to that. Okay, before we go any further, I just want to redo this edge here that we created before, that's splitting up the top view and front view. So if you can select the plane, go to the edge selection, select your edge, the edge that we want to remove, which is the edge that's dividing the front view and top view. Control, backspace. This will remove the edge from the plane now. We need the edge to go all the way down to the bottom. So if you can highlight each edge that goes from the bottom all the way to the top, highlight that. I'll go into a wireframe, F3, to show you what's selected. So these 4 edges here, F3 to unhide. Scroll down, connection settings. It'll have our original settings saved from the previous time we created our edges. So this is fine. If it's not -45 or 46, that's fine as well. You can change it until it looks pretty good. As long as it's not intersecting any of the images, that's fine as well. So you just want to commit that. So now that we have the top view, front view, bottom view and side view pretty much separated, that's fantastic. Now what we want to do, in the polygon selection, we want to click on polygon selection, select the side view. Now if you want to move an object along the y-axis, as you can see, if I hover my mouse over the y-axis, it goes yellow. Same with the x. If you want to move something along the z and y-axis, just hover your mouse over that little box that's dividing them both. Same deal with the x and z and x axis, and y and x axis too. So just keep that in mind if you want to move something along those two or specific axes. So that's fine. Okay, so to move this side view down, just hold shift and click on the z axis and move it down. Now you want to clone to object again and call it side view, and OK. Alright, now what we have to do is just reset the transform to its to that new object's rotation. So effect pivot only, center to object. So now that we can rotate this the way we want it to. Go back to the move tool, go reset the x, y and z coordinates to 0 0 0 0 0 0. Excellent. As you can see, I've rotated the top view to face the front view. So if I press perspective, the top view is now facing towards us, which is what we want. So to do that, what I did was just rotate it 90 degrees. So it was originally here, we just rotated it 90 degrees. 90 degrees, so it's facing forward. For the side view, we want to do the same. we want it to rotate 90 degrees so it's in line with the top view, and then rotate it up along the Y 90 degrees as well. So that way, if we go left view, we can see the side view, and top view, we can see the top view. So I'll just go back to perspective, and I'll just move this top view down so we have a bit of room to move. Now, the way polygons work is they use faces called normals. Now, what normals are a polygon's surface on which way it is facing. So if I have a ball, so let me just move this over here for a second, and I make a sphere. See how we can see the sphere, right? But if I convert that to a poly and I halve it, and I delete that half, now as you can see inside we can also see this sphere, but the normals are actually only facing outwards. So if I right click this sphere, go into object properties and backface cull to turn off the double-sided polygons, I commit OK, and as you can see the sphere is now not showing the inside of itself. So this pretty much explains what a normal is. So the normal is a direction of what a polygon is facing, pretty much. So just keep that in mind as well when you're having issues further down the track and you're not understanding how the polygons, which way the polygon is facing. So just remember those normals might be flipped or inverted. So just keep that in mind as well. So I'll just delete that and I'll go back to this. So for instance, with our side view, if I go to object properties and turn backface cull on, okay, as you can see, it's showing that the polygon is facing outwards, is facing towards the X arrow. Now we don't want this. We want it to flip the other side. So to do this, we can have polygon selected, right click the polygon itself, and flip the normal. So this way it will invert the normals to face inwards. So when we flip that, there we go. So now it's flipped inwards, and the back face cull is showing the other side as well. So this is exactly what we want. So I'll just go in there, back face, and that's exactly what we want. So just remember, a polygon only shows one side, but both sides are turned on in the viewport just to show you what's actually happening. Okay, so now that we've got our side view pretty much done, we can just move that out of the way, and we'll just create our, whoops, I'll unselect that, select the plane, go to polygon selection, and then just extrude, holding shift, extruding down, and create the bottom view. Okay, and same deal with the front view as well. So holding shift, Z, extrude down or up, doesn't really matter as long as it's away from the plane, and front, rename it front view. Okay, so I'll deselect that, and now we can just move this polygon out of the way. We can actually even hide it. So right click the plane and just hide the selection. Okay, so now what we can do, we can just reset. Make sure to always reset new objects when you create them. Effect pivot only, center to object, and I'll just move these down. Center them to the 0 axis. Center. Okay, so once we've done that, we can move the bottom view. So select the bottom view, undo that to move. Select the bottom view, move it up in the Z axis, and rotate the front view 90 degrees. Rotate it along the X axis 90 degrees, and then just move it back to the front view. Okay, so when I press T for top, we'll be able to see the top view, but since the back face cull is not ticked on, we're able to see the other side of the bottom view. So we can just change that by simply going out of top view, pressing P to go to perspective, right clicking that object, so select the bottom view, right click, object properties, back face cull, okay, and we'll just simply flip this around 180 degrees, and then we'll rotate it along the z-axis 90 degrees. So that way it's facing towards the front and it's still in line with the top view as well. So if I go to top now, you're able to see the top view pretty well without the bottom view interfering. So if I press P for perspective, we can just move this top view down a bit. So if I go F for front, F, as you can see the front view is not really in line with the center, so we just move it across. So just move it just about there, and we'll move it up just so it hits that black horizon line as well. Okay, so once that's done, press P, move around. Okay. Select the side view, move it down just so it's in line. Just make sure it's in line with the top view. We can also move it across a bit, make sure it's in line, and then just along the Z and X axis we can just move it across back to the position it was in before. So that way it's still in line with the top view, but we're able to see it pretty well in the side view as well. So if I press L for left, I'll just move it down as well just to center it a bit. L for left for side view, F for front view, T for top view, and B for bottom view. So it's exactly how we want it. Perspective. I'll just also too, if your canvas rotates very strangely around your viewport, this is because you have either selected something that doesn't exist anymore, or you've deselected something and it's just rotating. It's trying to rotate around your entire scene. So to change that, or if it's rotating very strangely, to change that, simply go to the view cube just in the top corner of your viewport, and that little house icon that appears, just click on that and it'll reset the rotation and your camera view to the center of the world again. Okay. So once that's all done, just make sure everything's correct. So we'll just change this front view to have back face culling again. So select that. That way, if we want to work behind it, we don't have that reference image blocking our way. So, yep, everything's pretty much there. Now what we want to do, while we're working on our model, we don't want to accidentally select the reference images and move them by accident. So what we can do, we can freeze these so we don't actually select them. However, by default, the freeze actually freezes your selection in gray. So what I mean by that is, if I select the front view, right click it, and go freeze selection, as you can see, it turns into a gray little plane, which we don't want. We want to be able to see our texture as well as it being frozen. So if you unfreeze that, you select your front view, right click, object properties, go into show frozen in gray. It's ticked on. Let's just tick it off and go OK. So now when I freeze the selection, it won't create that plane into a gray little image. So also too, I can't select it, so which is good. That's what we want. So do the same for all the other reference images. So show frozen in gray is ticked off. OK. Free selection. Same for the side view, object properties, untick show frozen in gray. Right click, free selection. So that way we can't select side view, top view, front view, and do the same for the bottom view as well. Object properties, show frozen in gray, OK. Left click, free selection, and it's all frozen there. So we can't possibly select our reference images anymore unless we right click and go unfreeze all, or if we go into our manage layers, which will have all of our objects under one layer. So we can simply unfreeze them from there, but for now don't worry about this. Okay, so then once that's all done, we can move on to creating our model. So yeah.